Hi, everyone. Welcome to Walchet Spotlight, where we engage with different legal tech vendors in the market to provide you a quick look inside their tools. In today's episode, we're looking at Luminance Corporate. Luminance is the AI-powered company based out of the UK, and they have 3 products. But in today's Spotlight, we're going to restrict ourselves to their product called Corporate. Joining me today is Luke Taylor, subject matter expert at Luminance, who will help us understand the corporate product. Hi, Luke. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. I'm really excited to be talking to you guys about what we have.
Looking forward to it. In the legal tech market, you typically have AI-based products that fall into 2 broad categories. The first, where you review contracts before signing, and the second, where you manage signed executed contracts. While the Luminance Corporate product started out as an AI-based negotiation platform, which helps you review products prior to signature, and this is totally its forte from what I understand, it also offers solutions around management of signed contracts. And through this spotlight session, we want to offer the audience a glimpse of how exactly Luminance Corporate works and what are the types of use cases it is most suited for. Did I get that right, Luke?
Yeah, so at its core, Luminance is using artificial intelligence to uniquely transform every single stage of that contract lifecycle. So one of the really exciting things that we're going to talk to you about today is that it is not just analyzing contracts before they're signed, pre-execution, with drafting contracts within seconds, negotiating them within Microsoft Word, but also our heritage actually came from working with private practice law firms, looking at thousands of documents they've never seen before in use cases like M&A due diligence, property lease abstraction. So that AI that is also focused on the post-executed side of the contract lifecycle happens all within one place with this AI that helps at every stage of that review. Got
it. So do you want to briefly walk us through exactly what Luminance does in each of these spaces?
Yeah, for sure. So as I mentioned, that core AI that we're talking about is uniquely applying to each stage of that contract lifecycle. So at a very high level overview of that, the first thing is being able to draft contracts in seconds. So whether that's from your own internal templates or custom drafting them within Microsoft Word themselves. Then we come to the negotiation piece, which we'll dive into in more detail shortly. But this is where Luminance's AI is actually the first in the world that can take a first pass review at incoming contracts. And it is not only using its own inherent understanding of contracts, things like NDAs and employment agreements and things, but also your own business's standards, benchmarks, and templates. But it's also learning from you as you work. On top of that, you've got a whole bunch of workflow automation tools within there, including the Luminance Help Desk, which we'll touch on as well, which is where the legal team can connect to with other functions in a business, for example, as well as what we were touching on then. The analysis of executed contracts goes far beyond simple contract storage. So this is an AI that has recently hit the milestone of analyzing 150 million contracts, and it gives an ability to find over 1,000 legal concepts within documents. And at this point, really well proven technology. We're being used not just by over a quarter of the global top 100 law firms, but also huge organizations ranging from companies like Tesco here in the UK, Ferrero in Europe, and Avianca Airlines out in South America, and more than that. And hopefully really excited, we'll dive into some of those in more detail today too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So we know AI is at the center of all of your automation. It would really help us if you could explain to us how the AI helps in, we were chatting earlier about the traffic light system. You were mentioning that when Luminance reviews any contract, it's got a traffic light system where it highlights issues as red, amber, and green. So if you could tell us how the AI helps in that process and how it can be customized for an organization.
Yeah, let's jump into an example. So all of that AI that you just spoke about there happens within Microsoft Word, which means that whatever process that you normally have, how most people receive a contract via email, you see here, I've got an email inbox opened up. To leverage that traffic light analysis and that AI, all a user has to do is open a document here into Microsoft Word. So you see I've taken this NDA here, and you actually have a Luminance plugin in the top right. And one click from that button doesn't just upload the document into Luminance, but just as you mentioned there, Priyadashini, it's the first AI in the world that takes that first pass review. And you've touched on a really interesting point there, where it is not just taking Luminance's own inherent understanding of contracts. So things like your high volume, low value contracts like NDAs, like sales agreements and things like that, but also your own business's standards and templates. And it uses that to color code or traffic light, if you like, incoming contracts as to whether or not clauses within them comply with or deviate from your own chosen standards. And it's all interactive, designed to be in the process of your normal review. You've mentioned, the aim of the game here is to free up my time from the low value activity of looking at language that might be written completely differently, but we know is saying the same as stuff that we've agreed in the past, and actually focusing my attention on the points that matter. So you see this example here where it's even picking out specific passages of text that allows us to see in this case, that it's a 4-year term period that looks non-compliant. And not only does the AI provide that first pass of the review, but also if you see over here on the right-hand side, what it also gives access to is what we call these suggestions. And this is where, I can see as a reviewer exactly, if I scroll down here, exactly how my business has dealt with similar clauses in the past. Because what
this is where the customization bit comes. So it's custom built for each organization's particular policies. So I can see what you're showing me is the past, what I've done in the past, and what is the recommended clause for the present.
And this is really important. So it's taking your expertise and your business's nuances. And the reason why this is so powerful is that it means it doesn't matter whether you are, IDEX Laboratories that are a biotechnology company out in the USA, whether you're Feature Space, which is a fraud protection technology based here in the UK. It is taking your relative expertise and your business's knowledge and showing that all within words. So when you have a senior member of the team that might have information siloed within their brain, if they leave the business, that knowledge goes away and is lost too. Alternatively, you might have junior lawyers or people that are new to the business that instead of asking legal questions on how we deal with everything, just as you mentioned, no matter who you are within the business, you've got at your fingertips, all embedded within Microsoft Word, an ability to instantly understand how you've dealt with almost any clause in the past.
Yeah, I think creating that institutional memory for any organization would be extremely useful.
And that creation point is really important too. So instead of, lengthy configuration periods and setup, the other beauty of the AI here is that it learns on the fly. So, if we think of this clause as an example, do you notice how this has been red flagged up until this point? Let's say that the standard of the business changed and, we were more than happy to accept this going forward. All the user would have to do, all during the review itself, you see these flags down in the bottom right, they can just click on one of these and insert these rationales because, the risk appetite is going to change on a whole variety of factors. And having this context where, here I could say, hey, everybody, this language is acceptable because of these reasons. And this immediately does two things. One, Luminance will grab that language, just as you mentioned, to use for future negotiations. But the AI also learns about that language conceptually, and it learns quickly enough that the very next contract we look at is then likely to get green flag going forward. And this is something that is possible when using something that learns on the fly rather than separate training going forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And, we were previously chatting about a couple of the out-of-the-box modules that Luminance is already trained on. I remember you recalling, I recall you saying that there are a couple of groups of documents, like the NDA and other such documents on which it's automatically already trained on. Could you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yeah, so we have 7 or 8 what we call modules. So on day one, just as you mentioned, Luminance will come with an inherent understanding of generally acceptable language in these contracts. So even without a single document of your own on there, Luminance can start green flagging anything that's, that's very clearly acceptable. However, for most, if not all of our customers, the real power comes in that learning piece that we just spoke about then, which is from the first document you look at. We have a listed Spanish security company that uses Luminance on multi-100-page MSAs, service agreements, that are incredibly complex. But actually, because Luminance is learning from the way that they negotiate those contracts, within the first week of them using Luminance, they'd already seen it adapting to the way that they work. And so, yes, you have that out-of-the-box benefit for a head start, if you like. But because the tool learns so quickly, it very quickly becomes your own bespoke tool as well. if that makes sense.
Understood. So I don't know, Luke, if it's possible for us to see an example, but you had showed me the last time we chatted about how when you use Luminance on a fresh document, it shows entirely up as yellow, and then you can sort of customize and say, this is acceptable, this is not. If we have time, it would be great if we could go through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's that similar example to what we just went through too. So if I come back into Microsoft Word here, in any clause that we're looking at, I'll use a different example this time. We could take this South African one, whether it's yellow, whether it's green or red, in any case, that's where these flags come into play. So whether it was something that I wanted to approve and mark as acceptable for the business, or even, if we were accepting this as a one-off, is another great example that we're often asked, how can I accept something for one single time? And I might actually red flag this clause because I want South Africa to continue to get red flagged. But I might say that, we actually accepted this one time, because of these reasons. And every single time with this is constantly adapting the language that Luminance is doing with you, as well as recording that rationale and that reasoning as to why that happened, so that the reviewer on the next contract they look at doesn't just get that updated coloring of the contract that you see on the left, but also all of that business knowledge on the right hand side too.
Got it. Understood. So I want to touch into one of the things you mentioned a little bit earlier, which is the process of setting it up. And you mentioned it was super easy. And I think the first question in every customer's mind is, how easy is this? So if you can tell us a little bit about the process of setting up Luminance Corporate for an organization from scratch, what does that look like?
So the useful thing about Luminance is that we don't have to code or configure anything. So from a setup from our perspective, we can build a Luminance system in less than 24 hours if needed. And often, we meet people at trade shows that see Luminance and want to get up and running straight away, for example, because again, all of these constant issues that are pressing, like the Russian sanctions going on at the moment was a huge driver for that. As far as the upload process is concerned, our heritage as a due diligence system means that the system is built to be able to go and automatically identify language in documents. So if I show you an example of this, if I open up my screen share here, all of this analysis here can simply be done from an upload screen. So all I would have to do is simply select a particular folder or a file, whether it's from my desktop or even from whether it's from something like SharePoint or an existing storage system that you had. As soon as you upload those documents, what you're looking at here is the product of that machine learning that has read, understood, compared, and categorized these documents automatically, because out of the box, it finds over 1,000 legal concepts within your documents. So things like categorizing them that you see up here at the top, that it's doing based on language within the contracts rather than file names and keywords and things. Same thing where it's finding
automatically extracting all of this metadata from each of the signed agreements.
Correct. And even live ones that you might be working on too, which means that, we spoke about those Russian sanctions. You see it here in the top right, Luminance plots on a map every mention of a country within these documents. That, it's been very popular at the moment. And we don't have any Russian documents here at the moment, but let's take China as an example. Within one click, I can go and filter down to these, in this case, 70 documents. I could go and see the kinds of agreements that these are relating to. I can go in and investigate these in more detail in completely customizable views over here, and even go and understand how certain clauses have been covered, all without having to open each document individually as we go through all of this too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's certainly useful. So I can see why you say under 24 hours, because I guess it's just a question of dragging and dropping all of your agreements into the portal.
No, this is exactly right. And this is what's so important. I think one of the common themes that we see, and especially if we deal with people that have had burnt fingers from lengthy configuration and training periods, the whole point of this machine learning is that it's designed to do it in underneath the work that you would normally be doing. So when you're lawyers that, no one has time to learn how to use a new system. So much of what you are doing on Luminance is actually inside a contract, whether it's in Word, whether it's on the application too, so that you can actually focus on the value add rather than the coding and the configuring that is often associated with technology.
Wonderful. So, Luke, I think my next question is going to be a little bit more specific to just help our audience understand what are the best use cases for Luminance?
Yeah, really good question.
Sorry, Luminance Corporate. I should clarify because you all have so many products.
Absolutely. And I think I can highlight a couple, because I think the one unique thing about Luminance is its kind of ubiquitous application, right? So having one system that augments everything across the entire contract lifecycle. Let's use that example about Russia again, and it applies to any scenario. Particularly in legal, you're faced with things that a tool hasn't seen before, or then more importantly, you haven't seen before. Not only are we able to go and source all of the contracts that mention Russia in our executed contracts, but because Luminance is learning from everything that you are doing within those documents, that has a trickle-down effect on other parts of the contract lifecycle. So, for example, issues that we find and source mentions of Russia in our supply chain, in our executed contracts, we can then immediately apply that to red flag certain things that are coming up in incoming contracts going forward. And we see this with so many different examples. So things like ESG compliance at the moment, which everybody is looking through their documents to adapt to changing goalposts and as the standards change all of the time, instead of simply coding rules and things like that to be able to deal with an issue that's going to be completely different in 3 months' time, going and seeing a machine that conceptually looks for, if I look for the mentions of pollution, and Luminance will also find emissions and things like that. And then
because it knows pollution and emission are related to each other. Correct.
And it's this conceptual understanding of language that Luminance has always been based off. And that AI approach that we took to begin with, it was quite easy for us.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I remember you also saying that Luminance is language agnostic. So it's not just pollution and emission in English. It could be pollution and emission in any language.
Correct. And this is a really important point for us. So we're being used in over 60 countries, in over 80 languages. We take, Ferrero, for example, or Avianca is an even better one that's using us in English, Spanish, and a whole host of other languages. And this is because it's just looking at patterns of language. So it doesn't actually matter what patterns those are in. It relies on your expertise in that language, of course, because it sits underneath the work that you're doing, which allows it to learn from you in whichever that you're doing. So yeah, absolutely.
Got it. So Luke, all of this sounds really great. I think the next big question on most clients' mind is going to be pricing. And I know Luminance works with each customer to work out a pricing model that suits their specific requirements. But it would be great if you could give us some insight into the basis of that pricing and what are the elements that are taken into consideration to arrive at that pricing.
Yeah, and it's another really useful thing with Luminance. So in a similar theme to the kind of ease of use and intuitive nature of the platform, we make our commercial model super simple. So there's actually only one factor that comes into the way that Luminance is priced now, which is the number of documents that Luminance is helping you analyze at any one time. And so what we mean by this is we provide sort of tiered pricing where you could have up to a certain amount of documents in Luminance at any one time. It's a flexible cap. So if you removed documents from that, let's say 10,000 that you have on there, you could free up that space to then put more documents on. Everything else is included. So there is no additional charge for upgrades to the product. We have a whole product specialist team that would actually work with you when training you and your business, would give advice on particular projects and reviews that you might want to do with Luminance. Any of our support that's 24/7 now, all of that is included in the same price. There is no add-ons with our tool whatsoever.
Got it. Great. That concludes our spotlight of Luminance Corporate. Thanks so much, Luke, for your time. For our audience, if you want to know anything more about Luminance Corporate, Luke, would you like to share an email address at Luminance that people can reach out to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think on our website, we give the opportunity to request a demo, and we're more than happy to take you through and actually tailor it to your business. So if you find us on luminance.com, from there, you'd be able to absolutely reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to help.
And from my side, if you'd like any legal tech product to be reviewed, or if you want us to do a spotlight on any of the other legal tech products in the market, please write into us at priyadarshini@walchet.com. We'd be happy to take a look at it. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.